The trade deadline is behind us, and a couple of contenders really leveled up. Here are the winners and losers from baseball's trading frenzy. So, baseball's trade deadline is behind us now, and I think it is a pretty good time to go through and see who won, who lost with the Major League Baseball trade deadline. So, let's dive right in. We'll begin with the winners. We'll begin on a positive note. Why not? The Seattle Mariners. Anytime you can come out of a deadline and people are responding to your moves saying, well, now this is the best lineup in baseball, you've had a pretty good trade deadline. They got a steal in Eugenio Suárez, and Josh Naylor is a really dangerous option for them as well. This team looks like a real problem, and we had talked about them being a team that was under pressure to make some moves and to be aggressive at this trade deadline, and aggressive they were with, again, I think it was a steal of a deal, getting Suárez and adding him and Naylor to a lineup that already had Cal Raleigh playing at an MVP level. This is a very, very dangerous baseball team, and they are going to be the proverbial no one wants to play them in the playoffs team coming up here this year. Up next, we have the San Diego Padres. The Padres adding another dominant closer in Mason Miller, along with a pretty good back-of-the-rotation starter in J.P. Sears, and then to add Ramon Laureano to their lineup, as well as Ryan O'Hearn. I think it's just some fantastic, fantastic work by this front office, and I have no idea how they accumulate the prospect pool that they do to be able to go out and make these types of deals. You can debate as to whether or not it has been good for them to keep going like this, but this has been an entertaining era of San Diego Padres baseball, and I think that this is something that a lot of teams and a lot of fan bases wish their front offices would do. Up next, you have the Athletics. We talk about Mason Miller going to the Padres. Well, they got an absolute haul for him. And yes, Miller is again, exciting reliever, very, very good pitcher, but you got one of the best pitchers in baseball for him. And so that makes this a team that is set up very, very effectively for the future. So I like that there is a lot that is going well with this team, and it seems like they're actually building towards something here right now. So that's that's another one of the winners. We have the Minnesota Twins. You can certainly debate if you should be selling if you have 10 good players that you can be trading, but they still got a pretty good haul, and I like a lot of the pieces that they brought in. So I think they're set up pretty well for going into next year and getting a few highly ranked prospects. And the last winner that I have is the New York Yankees. It hasn't gone great since the trade deadline, but they really addressed the third base spot with an all-star, and they got some much needed depth on offense, and then at the back end of the bullpen. They continue to screw things up, but this is a really, really strong start to baseball's, a really, really strong deadline for the Yankees. Couple notes in the chat talking about baseball's trade deadline here from Ryan Ballantyne in the YouTube chat. I do think the Jays added some good pieces without messing with chemistry, which is as important as anything down the stretch. Also for later, I think Triple H and Creative messed up the Cena face turn. It should have happened after SummerSlam. Cena loses, apologize, gets his adulation. The Brock music hits. Yes, yeah, I'm talked about the Cena turn yesterday. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. But yeah, that was not necessarily executed to perfection. On the Blue Jays note, I was left wanting a little bit more from Toronto's trade period. They did check boxes that they needed to. The bullpen one, it seems like they did really well. Like, I was hoping for one more kind of bigger name out of that whole process, especially after the Yankees added 4 closers to their roster. But they did that well. If Bieber is even close to what he can be, then that is a steal of a deal for the Jays. And Ty France, it wasn't the right-handed bat I was necessarily hoping for, but in the day before the deadline, the Blue Jays had Leo Jimenez pinch hitting. So better than that. So yeah, I think they did okay. But yeah, like obviously, vibes are immaculate with Toronto, and you didn't want to necessarily mess a lot of that up. So it was a fine line that they were trying to walk with the Blue Jays. That is for sure, and I think they did that pretty well. So those are the teams that did well. What about the teams that didn't? Let's look at the losers now of baseball's trade deadline. And we'll start with the Boston Red Sox as they get some help with Steven Matz, but they traded a prospect who was basically big league ready. And Matz has been struggling this year for the Cardinals. And when you look at Boston, they make the big Rafael Devers move. And apparently it was addition by subtraction, is what everyone was saying. But part of that was to free up some money and to spend that money. And I get teams have to trade with you as well. But to have your big moves be Matz and Dustin May, that's awesome if you're playing MLB The Show 17. But for this year, I don't think this was a very effective deadline for a Boston team that still felt like they were in contention and still are. Sorry, in the American League East. In the National League East, I have the Mets. I like the pieces that they added. And I guess that's why maybe they shouldn't be in the loser category, because their goal right now is to win the division and compete for a World Series. So they care not about the prospects that they are giving up, but they still gave up a lot to bring in what they brought in. They basically gave up 3 big leaguers, one currently and 2 very close, for Tyler Rogers. Again, it makes them better, but it was all just a lot to give up. And banners fly forever. The Dodgers have done this sort of thing where they don't care what they're giving up as long as it's something that fits their need. So we will see the Dodgers, or the Mets, sorry, do have to now put a little bit more into this, because you need to make that a win. And the only way to do that is if you're putting up a banner at the end of the season. The Arizona Diamondbacks were a loser for me. They were kind of reluctant sellers, and it just kind of felt like it. They had a few of the biggest pieces at this deadline, and it didn't feel like they got enough for any of them. And when you look at how all in the Twins went on that direction, and I get the Diamondbacks want to be competitive next year, not too far removed from an appearance in the World Series, but if you're going to do this, then do this and make your big moves with Suarez and Naylor and Kelly and all that. And I just felt like they kind of got 75 cents on the dollar because they either waited too long or just didn't really want to do it anyway. Whatever it was, Diamondbacks didn't really hit it on this one. Up next, the Tampa Bay Rays. They were another one that just kind of got caught between buying and selling. I understand, we've kind of talked about it on here before, and I've talked about it in other spots, just wanting to win the deadline, or wanting to win the trade, sorry, and whether that means it's a rebuilding one or not, whatever. But I do think that you have to kind of pick a direction when you're a team like Tampa Bay. And it just felt like they were, well, let's go out and add a big reliever. Well, let's trade this guy to the Yankees. And well, let's do this and that. And it just seemed like they were kind of bouncing around between a couple of different things. And then the last one was the Cincinnati Reds. They made a pretty big splash with Cabrian Hayes going to Cincinnati. And then they didn't really follow up on it, with all due respect to Miguel Andujar. But like, Hayes has a major contract. And I just feel like if you're going to do that, you got to now dive a little bit further in. If you make that declaration that we're going to go for it, then go for it. Instead of, all right, we're going to go for it. Little bit. I didn't like that from the Reds. So those are the winners and losers of this trade deadline. Just a reminder that you can get Couch Potato Diary wherever you get your podcasts, including on Spotify, as well as Apple, or anywhere else that you get your podcasts. And if you're listening in podcast form, we do stream these live. Just make sure you are following me on at Primetime Klein, basically wherever you are on social media.